Hello and welcome to today's session, Getting the Most Out of Your Workday Data with Rolls-Royce. My name is Kelly Emo, and I am the Senior Director of Technology Solution Marketing at Workday, and I'll be your host today. Today, we have a lively 20-minute discussion ahead of us, and then we're going to have 10 minutes at the end for questions and answers with our speakers. I would like to encourage all of you to send in any questions that you might have along the way. Please add your questions to the chat box in the right-hand corner. And if we don't get to your question, don't worry, we'll reach out with you directly after the session. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to begin with our safe harbor statement. Just keep this in mind, as do not make your buying decisions based on any future information. So now I want to give a warm introduction to our two speakers today. Today, I'm joined by John Borkowski, Data Officer at Workday, and also Marcus Millership, Transformation Director, Group Business Services at Rolls-Royce. I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to John and Marcus.
Thanks, Kelly. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. And in my role as data officer here, I have really the privilege of discussing all things data with leaders in many of our customers. And today, I'm very fortunate to be joined by Marcus Millership. And Marcus, to kick things off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Rolls-Royce?
Yeah, sure, John. Thank you very much, and thanks Workday for having me today. Very much appreciated. Yeah, I'm Marcus Millership. I'm Transformation Director for our Group Business Services organization here in Rolls-Royce. So predominantly, I've been with the company for 10 years, and over the last 2 years, my role has been transforming and essentially maturing the Group Business Services organization. I should just say as well that part of my role is looking after the People Services organization for Rolls-Royce as well, which is really where the Workday element comes in. So that's me. Thanks, John.
Great, thank you. In the discussions that we had leading up to today, and there were a handful, you mentioned that Rolls-Royce had faced some really significant challenges as a result of COVID, and I think it makes sense to start there. So can you tell us about what you were facing and how you addressed it?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I think certainly, like most businesses over the last 2 years, Rolls-Royce has seen a particularly difficult trading situation. I think the airline industry, in particular, has been hit pretty badly. And whilst we've got a fairly diverse portfolio, I think one of our primary businesses in civil aerospace has certainly seen a pretty rapid downturn. So I think one of the key things for us is that it's been a period of restructuring. It's been a period of having to be fairly agile and fairly innovative in terms of how we manage through the COVID crisis. And I think what's been pretty central to that is how we're managing our business and how we're trying to restructure using the data we have. And I think Workday has been pretty central to that. So certainly when we've been looking forward and modeling our new organization and looking at how we can reduce our costs, then of course, as you would imagine, our data and how we're utilizing Workday has really been key to driving that agenda. So yeah, it's been pretty tough. I would say I think really in the last 2 years we've seen certainly the downturn has impacted the way we operate as a business, and I think moving forward, essentially, how do we recover and how do we show that agility? And of course, as I say, Workday and the way we're utilizing our data is really at the heart of all of that.
Yeah, that's great. It's remarkable just how many different ways this has affected everyone. And I will ask you to dig in a little bit on that. But I think first, before that, so Workday's allowed you to kind of to respond to that black swan sort of event. And I'd also be interested to hear about present and future business goals that align with Workday.
Yeah, I think one of the things I would say, John, is I think just digging into the last question a little bit more before I answer the last question is I think if we go back probably 6 years before we had Workday, we've been a Workday customer for just about 6 years now. 2015 we implemented Workday. Could I have comprehended how we would have responded prior to Workday in the way that we've responded to this particular crisis or pandemic? It would have been literally impossible. I mean, I think the way we had an inconsistent approach around the business and how we managed our data, how we understood the organization, even how many employees we had in the business, and how we consistently viewed them was a real challenge for us. So I think, I'm particularly impressed with the way we've been able to respond to this particular situation by really utilizing that organizational ability, the understanding of our cost base, having all of our information in one system and being able to data extract that very, very easily and quickly. So I think that's been pretty important. I think business goals wise, one of the things I say about Workday, and when we think about our business goals and how we utilize Workday in Rolls-Royce is not just a HR system. We've had systems in the past prior to Workday, and we've really looked at them as systems to enable our people processes. Workday in Rolls-Royce is so much more. It's a business tool. It's a tool to inform the business, to give insights, yes, to manage some of our signature processes, and to get the kind of fundamentals of how we view the organization, how we manage the organization. So it's as much as seen as a business tool and a planning tool as it is a HR system, which is predominantly what we use it for. We don't use the financials, but we do use the HR system. And I think the other thing around how we vision using this system now and in the future is very much around how do we bring all of our information together in one place, all of our signature processes in one place, and use that to drive not only the people agenda, but to drive the business planning process when it comes to managing people. People cost within the business is the highest, or certainly one of the highest, if not the highest cost of the business. And having that total visibility of our workforce and how we plan and budget is absolutely essential. And that's what we've been able to do, certainly over the last 2 years. And I think now with the advent of tools like Prism, like Workday Prism, which we've recently implemented, we're now able to dig much deeper into that information and that data, and even start to link it to the financial processes. So, we're starting to bring in data from our financial systems, which previously were the single source of the truth. But now actually our finance colleagues are saying, well, hey, Workday is the single source of the truth when it comes to people data. We need to be using that system to drive our business processes around people, to manage this cost base. So bringing that data, actually exporting it from financial systems into Workday using Prism, and then using that to drive some of our business processes, I think is pretty revolutionary, really, in terms of how we've transformed our processes and the way we operate.
No, that's great. And I think we talked about specifically a Prism use case that you were able to bring in, or you were able to stand up very quickly. And I think it was around shrinking variance. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, I think that takes us back to the kind of the financial planning process. So, one of the things that we were never able to do is really understand our cost base for people, because we have Rolls-Royce. We have many payrolls around the world. We probably have getting on for 42 payrolls. We have 40,000 people and probably 42 payrolls. Some of them are pretty large, but some of them, as you can imagine, are fairly small. So we know how many people we have because it's there in Workday, and we have our structures, and we can report really well on headcount. But what we were not really able to do is report on cost. So basically importing costs, fully loaded payroll costs from our payroll systems into Workday, and bringing that information to sit alongside our headcount, to sit alongside our data structures, our organization structures, we were then able to say, right, okay, in the budgeting process, which by and large had made huge assumptions around employee costs and sort of averaged them out across the business, we were then finding actually that our budgeting process was way off. We generally overestimated, so our budgets were inflated, and of course there was huge variance between when the payroll costs were compared into the financial systems. So now what we're able to do is bring in real costs. We can bring them into Workday. We can then compare them against our organization levels, and then we can use that to drive the budgeting process ahead of time, and we've got actual costs. So rather than averaging these things out, we're able to be much more precise and much more accurate in our budgeting process, and that's making a real difference. I don't think we're there completely yet. So don't get me wrong, I don't think we've completely cracked this. But what I've seen and what I'm sort of experiencing now with our ability to predict financial costs around people, it's far greater than it ever has been, and that in the current climate where we're looking to reduce costs, restructure the business, move our teams around. That is just essential.
Absolutely, and being able to do it, I think, more importantly, in a system of trust, right, where that you actually can provide an accurate headcount and work from there. And listening to you describe all of this, there are a lot of common themes with the other conversations that I'm having out there, and there's a lot now with so what we call the intelligent unified data core, where we're bringing operational data from outside of Workday in to be able to analyze, but more specifically act. So bringing that data to the point of action is becoming just critical at this point. And for a long time, we were just the system of record for people in finance, and now with Prism functioning as a data hub, Workday really is part of a true part of the broader data ecosystem, and it's a point of aggregation now for all of that outside data in one place, where it's in a contextual way that people can actually act on those on that analysis. And again, it's the point of truth around people and money, and context again is so important versus a standard data lake so really what we say is it allows us to be decision driven, not data driven. So you start with questions in context instead of data and just trying to kind of get something out of nothing there. And as soon as data is out of the source of truth, you run the risk of the data lineage challenges, and you lose democratization. And we are now working to put governance in the hand of the business users, the true data owners, and make this discoverable and allow them to not only ask the right questions, but to then act on it accurately. And which really brings me to my final and favorite question. So what is next for Rolls-Royce?
What is next? Well, I think there's some business challenges, John, and I think a lot of our focus is on really taking those key actions to get the business back to where we were pre-COVID. And of course, we're seeing great signs now, green shoots of the industry recovering around airlines, which is one of our core businesses. Actually, we have seen some really good business performance in some of our other sectors outside of aerospace. But I think the key thing for us moving forward is we're doing some exciting things. We're introducing new technologies. We have a real sustainable future within Rolls-Royce. We're focusing on things like electrical technology, nuclear technology, cleaner, safer, energy for the future, and we're innovating with things like can we actually manufacture synthetic aviation fuel to run in our gas turbine engines. Now, the reason I mention these things is because we're having to think about the business a lot different. There's new skills coming in. We need to provide better insights into talent, capability, and how, and how we actually develop the business to be in a place where we can be more agile. Because some of these businesses are kind of startups. They're almost, we're looking at a Rolls-Royce business that's over 120 years old and has some, cutting edge technologies. But some of these new technologies are now coming into the business, and of course they're almost startups. They need to move quickly. They need to respond to the marketplace really quickly, and so we're having to respond and provide support to these businesses. We're having to use our system, our business tool, Workday, to make sure that we can absolutely develop the right talent. We can bring in the right talent. We can get great insights on that talent. And I think one of the key things is that we're creating a new data and analytics team across our group business services organization. It's a new organization that's specifically set up to get better at providing business intelligence back into the business. And of course, to really capitalize on the data asset that we sit in. Because we sit across not only HR data, but we sit across finance data, IT data, health and safety data within group business services. And what we need to do is utilize that asset, that data asset, use the power of our systems, particularly in Workday and using Prism, to give that business intelligence, that business insight back into the businesses, and to predict, to get better at advanced analytics and more predictable analytics. So I think there's a business agenda there. There's an agility requirement. We have the business tools. We've created a great data reliance and trust, which is one of our key focus areas, is to build that data trust and confidence from the business. But now it's about utilizing that data and being able to aggregate that data, I think, John, as you said earlier, so that we can add value back into the business and really utilize that. So, kind of an exciting future for the company. I think we'll develop more and more in our Workday tool. One of the things that our business really appreciates is the way we've brought in all of our activities into one system. Previously we had a lot of fragmented processes. Data was held in different systems. We now have single source of the truth. It's in Workday. We're able to drive most of our signature processes. So we've got a really good platform in which to build upon. But it's now about utilizing that and bringing it to a kind of more strategic level, if you like, as we grow and develop our businesses.
That's great, and that's why I love this question. There's always such an interesting answer, and I'm very, very excited to see how you grow and execute against all of that with Workday. And I think really that can bring us to our takeaways here before we take some questions. And really to summarize your point there, Marcus, and thank you for answering all of my questions. I very much appreciate it. First is you just, to echo what you just said, it's the most complete and accurate and trusted data. And the agility, the second point here, is key, and bringing the operational data into the system where you can actually act on it is really the wave of the future. That's just the way it's going. And finally, making those connections between your people, finance, and external data, and enabling those business transformations, and that you've been able to do there at Rolls-Royce to great effect. And it sounds like very quickly. So again, thank you so much for your time. And we'll bring Kelly back on to do some Q&A.
Absolutely. Thank you for some great conversation, both John and Marcus. Really interesting insights, especially around the power of data. We have a couple of great questions that have come in. I think that'll actually take some of these themes, Marcus, that you shared earlier and stretch them out even a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and bring our faces back on screen, so we're not looking at the Q&A slide. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and jump with the first question that came in, which is specifically about Prism. And the question is, what are some prerequisites that you recommend before using Prism in order to get the most out of it? So how to get started?
Yeah, great. Yeah, great. Shall I go first? Yeah, I mean, great question. I think one of the things we asked ourselves at Rolls-Royce when we were looking at Prism was, well, first of all, do we have confidence in our data? Because, frankly, bringing in a more advanced tool and a more advanced, method of data mining and data analysis still relies on having very accurate, trusted data. Because one of the things we find in the business is that when you put data or analytics in front of leaders or line managers, for that matter, the first thing that we used to find was, I don't recognize the data, or where's the data come from, and what's the data source. So I think a prerequisite is we have to be confident. You have to be confident in the sort of data that you're analyzing, that you want to analyze, that you want to bring into the system, and is that a stable data source? I think the other thing as well is that we started with Prism on a particular use case. We wanted to use Prism to drive the financial analysis of our people costs. And we wanted to stop there. For us, that was a worthwhile investment. That if we could crack that business planning cycle of being able to better analyze our people costs, of which is billions of pounds, and be able to better budget for the following year in a more accurate way, then that in itself would give us a business case for investing in a new tool. But I think once you get that excitement of the art of the possible, immediately new use cases appear. So I think the change process here and how you engage with key stakeholders is also quite key. And for me, even that is a prerequisite. It's that have a use case, engage with some key stakeholders, so that that when you bring in the tool, you're going to have some immediate things that you're going to want to investigate and you're going to use this new tool for. Some of the things that we were looking at now is we're looking at a whole range of things of can we bring in health and safety data? Can we compare that to our engagement scores that we run through Gallup? Can we with COVID, can we use the tool to analyze property utilization, etc.? So it is an endless use case really, and an endless really ability to analyze data, to add value to the business. And to John's earlier point is to make it quite actionable as well. So I think the key is, are you going to use this to actually drive actions, insights and actions? And you get a really good idea of that before you start. So yeah.
Great perspective on the use of Prism, and just kind of connecting from that related question. And it was actually something that you had talked about earlier, which was how you were able to use Workday and Prism to connect and bring in like the finance data along with your people data. And was there anything in particular that you did to really build trust across those different areas between the finance team and the HR team around that single source? You started to touch on it, but just kind of take that a little bit further.
Yeah, great question. I think I think it's fair to say that HR and finance in our company have worked quite independently for quite a few years in this particular area. So we would very much rely on the financial systems to drive the budgeting process in terms of people costs, and we would very often tend to use the financial system as the ultimate reporting tool for things like headcount, because we wanted it all together. But I think what has shifted now, and this is through close collaboration with finance. It's a joint problem, and I think the way we cracked this was to really collaborate with our finance colleagues around, if we have a more accurate view of our workforce, and one that we can all align on. If we have a single source of the truth in Workday, because that really is the only consistent tool in our business that can report on headcount and knows who everybody is, where they sit, and who they report to, and what cost center they're on. Then really let's collaborate on that being the source of the information, and then use that to drive into the financial processes. So yeah, let's start with that, and make sure that that's the key tool that's driving the financial processes. And then I think once we had, I think, a fairly confident view that the data that was coming out of Workday was actually very, very accurate, then it was interesting because our CFO at the time was then very, very keen on Workday producing as much of the people data as it possibly could. So it was then we started to explore, well, what would it look like if we could take payroll costs and put them back into Workday and then align them back into Workday throughout the people data that was accurate? Then wouldn't that give us a better output and a more accurate analysis of our people headcount and cost? And I think working together on that as a business process and as a solution, and having it as a joint problem rather than, well, you've got the headcount problem, we've got the cost problem, I think that makes a big difference. But collaboration is the key, and aligning on that single source. I mean, I can't stress how important that really is. Once you get the basics right, then I think everything else flows from it.
That's great perspective. Just bringing one other team in, kind of the IT and security perspective. How are you managing with all of this single source, this really critical data? How do you manage who can, and do you in essence control who can see it, and being aware of who has access to that data? So kind of the governance perspective for our IT audience.
Yeah, you see, that's the great thing, because we don't have to worry too much about that because we use Workday. Workday has a fantastic security model within it, and one of the principles we have within the company, whether that's when we're using Prism to analyze data, is we try not to remove data from the core system. So if we can bring data from other data sources and bring that into Workday, then we know we can use the security model within Workday in which to govern who sees what at what level. And building those sort of data dashboards into Workday, so that if you're a line manager in the business, your security profile automatically gives you those access rights without us having to do anything different or provide different profiles. Then I think that's something that works really well. And by and large, we've stuck to that principle. Bring data into Workday, use Workday security model to drive the process, and really think about why you would ever need to extract data from Workday. In fact, in Rolls-Royce, we pretty much don't allow any line manager, in fact, anybody out of HR cannot export data out of Workday. They have to use the inbuilt dashboards and the reporting functionality within Workday, which is excellent. Why would you ever need to export Workday? And actually, that's helped significantly when we have implemented additional data security, when GDPR came in from European perspective, and when we're trying to get things through our German Works Councils, which is notoriously difficult, of course, in terms of data security, and rightly so. But it really helps us to manage those conversations.
Oh, that's great. And this is such a great conversation. Unfortunately, we're running up against the half hour. So I want to just take a moment before the audience moves to the next session to thank Marcus and John for such a meaty and inspiring story about the power of data. And especially, I wish you very, very great things and lots of innovation moving forward at Rolls-Royce. And to our audience, I hope that you've all really enjoyed this session. And thank you again for your time. Thanks, John. Thanks, Marcus.
Thanks for having me. Thank you very much.
Cheers.